start.
All right.
Hell yeah.
Volunteers. Let's start with Owen.
So I am going to pass these around. There probably is not enough for everyone, but people can look at them if they want, read it as I go.
I guess if you read it already.
If you've read it already, there's not a whole lot of changes. But, so, the story I'm pitching is Azovka. And let's bring up the pitch fast version. I know one word. Alright. So, the log line for this is, after falling out of a refugee caravan, a young Jewish boy escapes into the mountains, meeting a cursed girl who helps save him from persecution. The general story beats or this goes as follows. In the foothills of Mount Azov, a refugee caravan of Jewish migrants flee from Russian Cossacks. Yuri, a frightened boy, listens to his mother tell him the history and folklore of the surrounding mountains. She tells the tale of a girl who was stolen by a dragon and cursed to live on the mountain for all eternity, turning into a horrible monster when the night falls. In the distance, they hear the Cossacks yelling, and with the crack of a whip, and the caravan picks up to speed. Yuri's mother holds him tight, but her grip slips, and Yuri falls off the caravan. In the distance, Yuri hears battle cries of the Cossacks, and in fear runs into the mountains. Realizing he's alone, and the sun is starting to set on the mountainside, Yuri seeks shelter in a nearby cave. Yuri hears crying from deep in the cavern. He ventures into the cave, eventually coming across a girl around his age. Hi, Sean.
Hi.
Pizza's here!
Yeah, I knew that was going to happen.
Of course.
As we start.
Okay, wait. Yuri asks the girl who she is. However, she responds vaguely, only mentioning that she's lived on the mountain for a long time. The two walk out of the cave and discuss the beauty of the mountain. The girl makes a suspicious comment about how the mountain has changed over the years. The girl then confides in him that she is Azovka, the cursed child from the old stories. The sun finally sets, and the moon starts to rise. The girl says she has to go with no explanation. She runs back into the cave, telling the boy not to follow her. The boy sits outside the cave, looking out over the forest. In the distance, he sees a light flickering and the loud yell of the Cossacks. The lights keep going, getting bigger, and Yuri panics. He calls to Azovka for help. The Cossacks come close to the mountainside, cornering Yuri. They brandish their rifles at the boy. Suddenly, a beastly roar echoes throughout the mountain. A beast emerges from the caves, scaring off the Cossacks. The sun rises and the beast turns back into Azovka. The two agree to remain friends forever. So, sort of the inspiration behind this is, my family is Russian, and I grew up with a lot of Russian folklore and tales kind of told throughout my family. And Azovka kind of has a lot of different names. It has the name the Malachite Maid. It's kind of a common thing in the region of Oblast. Sort of a piece of cultural heritage. And so the style sheet, or not style sheet, this is the mood board. I just kind of chose a lot of imagery from Russian folklore and mythology, as well as this because I thought it was a cool creature design. Yeah, that's kind of what got put on the mood board. For the style sheet, which is generally kind of what I had pictured the style to be, not necessarily the style that we necessarily have to wind up going with if we were to go forward with this, but I was kind of looking at a lot of Cartoon Saloon, which is that Irish studio that put out The Secret of Kells and Song of the Sea, as well as sort of a 3D equivalent would be the kids from Up, with their designs of their very circular heads and yeah. Also, you can see an image on the far right from a Ukrainian short film called Mavka, which also has a lot of stylistic influences that I could see being translated over. Any questions?
So how do you see the relationship developing with the dragon and the hero? Is there development of it, or is it just that the dragon shows up at the end of the thing?
Azovka is the dragon.
Oh, so good.
Yeah. She was cursed to be the monster.
And for
I missed
Azovka,
that.
do you did you imagine her being more of a dragon-like creature, or is that more of just a starting point and you wanted to branch off from there?
That's more of a starting point. When I pitched the story, I knew it was going to get changed.
Mhm.
So it doesn't really matter to me what kind of monster she turns into. It's just kind of a story point that she would be turning into a monster.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But a benevolent monster? Or is she?
Benevolent to a degree.
Okay.
But also, that depends on what direction you go with the story.
Are there Russian influences of the monster design that you were thinking about?
Yeah, so there's a lot of, in Russia, the dragons are they're kind of a weird hybrid between, more traditional European dragons and hairy beasts, so I thought part of the reason why I chose the image from the Swan Princess is because it's kind of similar to a lot of those things.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, I had it looking a little bit more like a bat, but that's just where my mind went to.
Cool. That was my question.
Yeah. Eric.
How do you see this, or do you have any ideas for how this would tie into an anthology series?
So, in terms of an anthology series, I could see themes of friendship or culture being brought into anthological themes, or if we wanted to go even darker, we could even talk about themes of oppression in foreign society. There were some stories that were pitched that had broadly to do with fighting against society and rising up. And while I don't think necessarily that is entirely present, there are definitely themes of fighting back against, obviously the Russian power at the time, which was the Russian military and government embodied by Cossacks. We also have a ton of stories that are being pitched that come from a lot of different cultural backgrounds. In terms of an anthological series, we could turn it into a celebration of culture as a potential idea. So there's a lot of different ways we could go with this in an anthological series.
Did you imagine the short film to be not, or dialogue free like a lot of our past films have been, or did the beginning with the mother and Yuri kind of makes it feel like there should be dialogue? What is your opinion on that?
I definitely wrote this with dialogue in mind. However, I do know that if the story were to continue, if we were to cut certain elements from the story, we might not need dialogue. So I guess the answer to that question kind of would depend more on how the story would be workshopped by the story class after selection, if it gets selected. And in terms of my thoughts on dialogue, I know that there's been issue with dialogue in the past on student films, and I think to some degree it's kind of inevitable. But I also know that we could work with the film department and get access to some of their sound recording studios. I know personally that I know how to work a ton of sound equipment because I have experience with it, and I know there's other people within the program who have experience with sound equipment. So I have faith that we could get some decent sound from this.
I think it's also a concern of facial animation, probably.
That's true. That's true.
But I think the sum up is that you're saying it's flexible.
Yes. Thank you, Joey, for summing up my many words. Yeah. Very good.
Any morals or themes that you had in mind when you were
So,
like what the story is, or the lessons to be learned here?
So I don't really necessarily have a specific moral that I had going into it. I definitely wanted to include themes of culture, folklore, and friendship. The initial message in the fairy tale is plot twist. The original fairy tale has her kind of falling in love with this dragon, and it's almost similar to the Beauty and the Beast story. And I don't necessarily think that the message would translate super well because I think the original Beauty and the Beast story has a lot of themes that would promote or kind of promote the idea that you should be okay with living with a monster. And with this, I think it's a lot more about kind of learning to accept yourself and accept your friends and finding friends in new and surprising places.
Great.
Why is the boy and his family running away from the Russians at the beginning? Is it a point that's really crucial to the story, like culturally, or that's just a starting point?
So, culturally in Russia, there were pogroms, which were very similar to Kristallnacht in Nazi Germany. Jews were basically chased out of their homes and were forced to flee. It's not super important that it's there. I wrote it more as a plot device to get the story rolling. Again, it's flexible. The story can change.
Any other questions? Awesome.
Sweet.
And with that one finished, go get your pizza.
Alright, I'm going to be presenting from here. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Alright, so my story is called Inspiration, the Painting Dragon. Theme is childhood is never truly lost. So after befriending the dragon that would appear out of her paintings as a child, a teenage girl loses her dragon and lives a dull gray life until she discovers how to find it again. So it starts with a little girl is finger painting and is surprised when a small bright dragon splashes out of her painting. Overjoyed at finding a new friend, she and the dragon begin to create a brilliant masterpiece across her paper and the table. Her mom walks in and gets angry at the mess, which quickly scares the dragon away. Then the girl is upper elementary age and helping paint the walls of her bedroom. When her parents step out of the room, she begins to paint on the empty walls and plastic-covered floor and images and swirls. Her dragon soon bursts out, spraying her and the room with paint. She laughs and they color the room until her dad comes back and angrily demands she cleans it up. The dragon tries to continue painting, but slinks away as the girl sadly begins pulling up the plastic to toss. Then the now teenage girl is admiring a vibrant mural on the side of a building. That night she takes some spray paint, finds an empty wall, and begins her own mural. The dragon erupts from the paint and flies along the wall, shooting out fiery colors to help her paint. Suddenly a cop shows up, frightening the girl and causing the dragon to flee. Later the teenager sits in her room as her dad rants and her mom cleans out her art supplies. They storm out, leaving her room bare and her sitting dejected. The girl, now a young woman, walks into a mostly bare apartment with white walls, carrying buckets of paint with her. After laying out drop cloths and plastic, she begins to paint the walls gray. There is no joy or fun in it, it's just another chore. Snippets of her new life in the gray apartment go by. She eats some food, fixes her hair, walks to the bus, works, goes home, eats, brushes teeth, and goes to bed. It's a simple daily routine. One day, she's walking home and sees a little boy coloring the pavement with chalk. She smiles a little wistfully as she sees him having fun. This turns to surprise when she sees a colorful animal dance out of the chalk and help him create a large, vibrant picture. She watches in amazement. She hurries home and pulls out the few art-like supplies she owns, setting them out across the entire table. She hesitantly begins to lay out a few strokes, but nothing happens. Determinedly, she stands and tries again, beginning to splash the paper with color. Nothing special happens, but she doesn't let up. Eventually, there's a ripple in the color. She keeps going until her dragon springs out. She laughs in joy and amazement and embraces the dragon. Then they happily continue making a masterpiece. So, kind of dealing with ideas of childhood inspiration and joy in creating something, and losing that joy and having to try and find it again. This, what else exactly is down here? Wrong thing. This is my style sheet. I'm going to be using a pitchfork. Not that I really need it, but alright, so up here are some ideas about the dragon. I especially loved this one when I found it. The idea of the dragon maybe not just being a real physical dragon, but something created from the paint itself. So splashes of color and movement of the paint as the dragon moves would be a great idea, but also the idea that the dragon's like coming out of the painting, so it's not physical, it's a bit more an idea in some ways. But I also really love the idea that it's a playful dragon. It's there to help create and have fun. These are some of the ideas for style. I didn't have a specific style in mind coming up with this, but I loved the look of DreamWorks Abominable that was just coming out. I haven't seen the movie, but I've seen the trailers and I love the style of the animation. It's not super complex, it's a little bit cartoony, but you can get a lot of emotion from it, which is kind of the driving force of the story. And then just some ideas of some color palettes, bright colors for the childhood and when she finds the dragon again, and the dull gray life that she had in between without the dragon.
Question?
Is the dragon kind of her muse?
Somewhere between muse and just physical embodiment of her own inspiration. Just that when you're creating something and something you love and you just feel that joy and that spark inside you, but it's outside you now. The mood board, mostly just trying to embrace that colorful, fun playfulness versus the dull life without that fun. Any questions?
How many stages of life do you plan to show her in? Because that could maybe affect how many different characters that we have.
So the story that I came up with, there was the 3 childhood and then like 1 adult. So like little child when you're first painting and creating and it's not very pretty. The middle-aged child, like upper elementary, was kind of just to show that transition before you get to teenager where she loses it because she goes too far and tries to create in a way that is not necessarily the most constructive for everybody. So that's my plan. It of course can change. You can do more, you can do less. I would assume you'd probably want to not do more because that would get complicated quick. Yes.
Do you have any idea what the event in this character's life that made her so kind of dull and just dropped her art for the rest of her life? Is there a sort of moment that happens?
So as a teenager, when she goes out and decides to spray paint a building and gets caught by the police.
Is she like arrested for that?
Yeah. So I was kind of skipping the arresting part, but basically the cop showing up and then her in her room getting scolded by her parents and them taking drastic measures to take out her art. The way I picture it is the parents going, okay, clearly art is a bad influence if you're going to go out and deface public property, so they just take it away. And that's kind of where she loses a lot of her joy and fun and reason for doing it if she's not allowed to anymore, you know? Yes.
So my only concern is that with her being framed as like the hero and then her parents and the cops taking her paints away after she graffitis a building, I'm worried that kind of sends the message of like, it's okay to deface public property, just don't get caught, because then people will kill your creativity. I think it might have more of an emotional impact if maybe she's like angry and starting to paint it and the dragon comes out and he realizes like, you're doing something bad and leaves.
So like the dragon stops her from painting. That's an interesting idea. I mean, the great thing about these stories is that they can change and that they'll be developed differently than they are now. So that is an awesome idea. And I agree that there is some iffiness in the message during the teenage year area. Yes.
You know, the way I see it, this is a great idea, by the way. I love this idea. I kind of see the dragon as the embodiment of her creativity and that freedom and creativity. And just a suggestion over time of that creativity being stifled by her parents, the dragon could start to drab out a little bit. Like the dragon's colors get a little bit more grayed out as they go until she finally lashes out and she's spray painting the wall, and then the dragon could be gray and just goes away.
That's a great idea.
It could just walk off, yeah.
along those same lines, I mean, it could be that school starts to, you know, because that's a big thing now, right? The arts are suppressed and math and engineering and those kinds of things are put forward. And maybe that just starts to quell her desire to be an artist.
Yeah, that's a great idea too. Something else, adding to that is that sometimes even art school can be stifling.
Oh, yeah.
And that could
Sorry.
be an interesting.
It's all Jeremy's fault.
That could just be an interesting thing to explore. Maybe that it's not just other things that stifle art, but sometimes even just being too focused on the art itself or what you're trying to do with it, and not the joy that you get from it.
I
Maybe.
think, you know, as a kid, that creativity is unstifled. You know, we can make scribbles as little kids and it's just awesome, and you know, and for some reason that gets lost over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that I really like the message we have going so far, because I think it's one that everyone, at least in this room, can relate to, as far as like having an artistic drive slowly be kind of weighed down by responsibility and other things that you have to take care of. So I really like pushing for that narrative. What was your inspiration for this? Like what was this?
What was your inspiration for the story? Inspiration.
Inspiring question.
Oh.
So
Inspired people wanna know.
I mean, part of it is I'm around kids a lot, and I absolutely adore children, and to see how they see the world is crazy sometimes. And to see them be able to, like, just do something and not care what other people think about what they're doing, and just enjoy doing it. To give them some crayons and to see them make something that they absolutely love, even if you can't tell what the heck it is. Or to give them paints and colored pencils and say go for it, and they make something that's like actually really good, and you're shocked that a 6-year-old can do something that nice. Like, it's just great to see kids doing that, being able to just be creative without any boundaries. So that's kind of where I started from. And then personally, like Chile said, that's something that artists deal with a lot, is having to focus that artistic energy and trying not to lose the creative spark and fun while you're doing that is really tough. So I don't know that there was a defining thing that inspired it, but just kind of a couple different things coming together. I don't know. And the idea of having a physical creature that's like your friend helping you create something is just a fun idea.
Sort of like elder dogs.
Yeah.
Very cool idea.
What's your plan or idea for a tie-in to an anthology? What do you picture with several different short films that kind of expand on this?
Well, I think the great thing with the anthology is it doesn't have to tie in too strictly with the story itself. It can be tied into the theme, and there are lots of different themes in this, in a way. It's about creativity and fun, joy, growing up, relearning things you already learned. There's a lot of different things you could go with this. Another fun idea that came up in story class when this story was brought up is the idea that people could have different inspirational creativity animals. So like, maybe not a dragon, maybe yours is a squirrel or a crocodile or whatever.
Patronus.
Yeah, it's your creativity Patronus in a way. So I mean, that if you wanted to tie it in real close to the story, that could be something that's explored. I think that the themes make it really broad for the anthology. Like, there's a lot of different ways you could go. You could even go like just colors too. Brighter colors, dull colors, the contrasts that you can get from that maybe.
You could make a friend who has a different one, and they like have different styles or colors, and then the animals start playing together, and it's like a proxy for like the two people's relationship, or friendship, or whatever.
I mean, on the anthology thing.
Cut.
Yeah.
Not enough time.
Less than
Sorry.
an hour.
On the anthology thing, this could be just, a loose connection to lost childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other films come up with something that deals with lost childhood. And that really opens it up.
Mhm.
And I think that's a really interesting approach to this.
I do too.
That's why that
I
makes sense.
really like that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, going next.
Hell yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, it's me. Yeah, cool. Am I able to? I have, I'm gonna move the mouse over here, so the timing matches. Oh, I see it.
Yes, we're wrapping it.
Okay.
I think that works. No, it doesn't work.
You want a clicker?
It's okay. Oh, is there a clicker in this room?
There can be.
It could be your clicker.
Yeah, I just, I wanna keep my timing correct, that's my only problem. That's my trying it?
Oh, I already have it.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Okay.
A little bit of time constraints.
Alright, let's quiet down.
Alright, guys. Sorry. So, hi, I'm Tia. Nice to meet you. My story is lanterns, and my theme is mystical, family, and adventure. Frenchie, can you just click it?
Okay.
I don't know why it's not going.
Okay, that's why. I think it's just, yep. What is going on with this thing?
Oh, slide down.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to scroll.
Okay, cool. So, things go awry on the evening of the Mid-Autumn Festival when a young girl stumbles upon some mystical guests. Alrighty. So this is my mood board. Very colorful. This one would definitely be lighting heavy because it would be in nighttime. The entire tour would be in nighttime. And it's here I just chose like a whole bunch of images from the Lantern Festival in Vietnam. Those are my colors. Next. You can scroll down. Angie.
Gotta indicate me.
This is my This is my setting. I chose like a nice just small strip of like nice older buildings, some traditional buildings, because I thought that it'd be pretty nice to just have it animated in a condensed space, and it would be really beautiful and give more sense of a community. Please scroll. So now here's my main character. Ngoi Sao, that means star. I had my sister help me draw everything, guys. I can't draw. So she is independent, impatient, and adventurous. And you see she has a lantern, and we'll come on the story soon. And you can scroll. This is her papa. In Vietnamese, we call him Ba, and he's a fisherman, so he has a fish. And you scroll down, and then we meet the mystics. Over there is the wind spirit, and over here is the water spirit. And you scroll. So how it plays out. So we open up our scene with Ngoi Sao watching her dad leave before the Lantern Festival. So he's going off to sea to fish. So the Mid-Autumn Festival, or also known as the Moon Festival, is the most joyous time for children. It is a day where busy parents throw everything they need to do aside in order to spend valuable family time together with their children. The day is filled with joy from spending time together, while the night has a parade of dragons and glowing lanterns. Here we follow a young girl named Ngoi Sao. As we enter the scene, she is sitting alone while noises of happy families outside are heard. A picture of her and her fisherman father sits on the living room table as she sighs. Impatient, Ngoi Sao grabs her lantern and runs outside to join the festival. A beautiful wind spirit notices the girl running alone and decides to keep her company and uses her magic to fly her lantern away. The girl, shocked, chases her lantern through the city streets to the ocean. Here we see the water spirit go converse with the wind spirit. After realizing what she was intending to do, which was to have fun, the ocean decided to join in and throw the lantern
around as well. Without realizing the dangers, the spirits throw the lantern into the ocean. Ngoisao follows the lantern into the water and comes back out soaked to the bone. She hugs her knees and starts to sob. The wind and water spirits feel guilty and they leave the scene. Soon you see someone tap Ngoisao's head, and when she looks up, it was her father. The father discusses that he wasn't expecting to be home due to bad currents of the sea, but the sea suddenly settled and the wind led him home. The last scene is Ngoisao and her father entering the festival with Aoyai and lanterns. Aoyai is traditional clothing, like this. So my story pretty much is like this. The Ngoisao, she leaves on her own, and then she meets two friendly spirits, and they kind of, after playing around with her, they didn't realize how far they took playing around, and that's how she ended up in the ocean. And then you can scroll down. Yeah. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Oh no, wait, sorry, you already answered this. You kind of, sorry.
Oh, okay.
You can still ask.
You can still ask.
It
No
was
worries.
about the lighting, but then you started with that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's very, this one would be very lighting heavy, but it's pretty. Okay, any other questions, Ryan?
It's a very beautiful cultural story. I'm wondering what you would think the takeaway message would be for this.
For this one, I wanted two takeaway messages from this one. One is about kind of bullying, which is like the spirits didn't realize they were actually bullying her until they took it too far. And then and it was about reflection, that's why they brought the dad back home. And then it was about family and being patient. So, you know, when you're impatient, sometimes things don't go the way you wanted it to, and that's pretty much what happened with her story. Yeah.
Forgive me if I missed it, but to that extension of the importance of family, was there any allusion earlier on to the fact that the father would probably be missing this festival?
Yeah, so the opening scene was actually, she was sending her father off to the ocean while she was holding her lantern, and then it shifts onto another scene where she's sitting alone with his picture.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions?
How many main characters, would you say we would be looking at for you?
We would be looking at 4. So I think the rest is like, because you can hear noises, but since she's running out, I think it's more important that we focus on the 4 characters that there are on there. Yeah. Yeah.
So is she just alone? Like the dad just like left her alone, or does she?
Yeah,
have a
the dad
mom
just left
too?
her alone. So so like the image didn't have a mom in it. So originally the story I wrote it in high school, and I just thought that it's okay. You know, it's a single dad raising a child by himself. And in Vietnam, it's actually really normal for the dad to leave fishing. I'm actually from a fishing village, and like my grandpa would be gone for like 3 months at a time, and then come back home to like my mom and her brother. Yeah. So it's like, it was like something that like I know a lot about for fishing villages. So that's why he just left, because he's used to it. He's going out to make money to come back home.
Anything else? One last question.
This isn't really a question, but more of a comment generally on all the pitches. I think it's important to remember that all the stories that are being pitched are going to still be workshopped by the story team.
Yeah.
So there are probably going to be changes that are made to all these stories.
Yeah, so nothing's ever solid. A story's always changing to the end. So like, these are all just normal pitches. I'm okay with any comments, guys. Like, just throw them at me. I love changing stuff. Revision's part of growing.
If we could keep your sister's art style though, that's adorable.
Yeah.
I love your sister's art style.
Thank
It's
you.
just,
Yeah,
it
actually,
just makes me happy.
we had to sit down because she drew him in so many different ways, and then she settled on this one because she said she made the dad hot.
Alright, I think we'll cut it there.
can't break free.
Don't get that.
question, that probably will be workshopped a lot.
Okay,
No, that was the recording, sorry.
Thank you.
There we go.
So whatever decision now,
Okay.
might be different from later.
Good luck, you're gonna do great.
I have to.
Stop. Stab yourselves.
Oh no, I
It's the Match Network of the duo. It's like dancing in a ballroom, but they're all fighting.
Cool. So my story is called Little Boy Death. The theme is you can't run away from your responsibilities. And the log line is a young reaper befriends a sickly human boy, but in doing so avoids his responsibilities. A fledgling reaper gets his first assignment to take the soul of a young boy with a fatal disease. He didn't really know who it is, but his parents assured him that he'll just know when he finds him. Unfortunately, that didn't seem to be the case, because maybe if it was, he wouldn't have befriended the boy whose soul he was supposed to reap. Instead of actually doing this job he was supposed to, he spent the day playing with his new friend. Slowly, his black and white world evolved into one of colors, with shades of pinks, blues, oranges, and he couldn't be happier. He left the day promising that he'd do his job tomorrow. But one day became 2 days, and 2 became 4. Little Boy Death became even more reluctant to take his first friend's soul, so he just didn't. He watched with bated breath as the doctor re-examined his friend for the illness Little Boy Death knew he no longer had, and smiled when his friend was finally allowed to go home. How could giving someone a bit of extra time be so wrong? Anyways, his parents were too busy overwhelmed with work to notice one little human. And, in fact, this would have held true if it weren't for the rotten luck the human boy had. At first, it was kind of comical, like something straight out of those old cartoons Little Boy Death loved so much. But slowly escalated to falling down the stairs so hard it should have cracked his skull, to getting into a car accident so bad he should have died on impact. No matter what was thrown his way, the young boy survived, but the same could not be said about his mental state. The boy lived in a small superstitious pueblo, one that rejoiced when the boy was released from the hospital, but now cowered in fear and disgust. When the young human boy walked down the street, whispers of Hijo del Diablo and Brujeria followed him. Little Boy Death had to watch day by day as his first friend became a husk of his former self. Unknown to him, his parents were watching the whole thing unfold and decided it was about time they stepped in. With a firm hand, they scolded their son. He had a responsibility, one he was choosing to ignore. Humans weren't meant to live forever, and if this kept up, the boy would forget what made him a person, becoming a poltergeist in the process. So Little Boy Death had a decision to make. Either he takes the boy's soul or let his friend suffer. With a heavy heart, Little Boy Death took his confetti bag and made his way to his friend's home. It was midnight, but even with that fact, the young boy was sitting on his bed, waiting for Little Boy Death to come take him away. So this is my mood board. I'm gonna go over there real quick. Shut that down. Get that bigger real quick. And we're shrinking it down again. Oh God. Okay. Shut. You don't vote for leaving it like that. Okay, we're done. Okay, so I was thinking I really wanted it to be kind of like creepy. I mean, not creepy, kind of like morbid, but super, super cute. Like cute art style. And I was also thinking of like having it more like calaveras, just because I do want Little Boy Death to be very colorful. Like, I do want him to maybe start like black and white, but his clothes are super colorful with like confetti in his hair. And like, he uses confetti to take people's souls.
That's great.
Yeah. And so I was also thinking of like having it set in Mexico, because you know, I'm Mexican. So I feel like that should be self-explanatory. And specifically in my mom's pueblo, because I felt like it had a very like homey, more like super close feel to it, especially because I feel if this happened in the city, no one would care, you know?
Or like, I know that if you go to my mom's pueblo, if people notice this stuff, they would be like, yeah. Especially because I have an aunt who's a witch, and she's always like, this is what she deals with. So I thought it'd be fun. Can I switch over to the? Let me go over here real quick.
I have more questions about that, but I'll wait.
Okay. Give me
Oh,
I'll
don't
close
let the
right.
pizza
There
go.
we go. Okay, I can't see. So yeah, I was thinking like, well, like Book of Life, super super colorful his face, and like kind of like this colorful. The style from Little Nightmares, except cuter and like brighter. I don't want it to like when you look at it to be like super bleak and sad. I just want it to look happy and cute, and yeah. That's it, guys. Any questions?
Can I share my, like, what was going on inside my head?
Sure.
I was picturing
Oh,
like,
no.
I was picturing like adult parent reapers in the typical style with like hooded black, those big sides and stuff like that. And then I was imagining them like instructing their little child who's like almost exactly like that, except with like a tiny side made of like rubber, or like it's inflatable like a balloon. Like when they use theirs, it's like this big dramatic, scary like it rips space time, and then when he does it, just goes squeak.
I think you should be in a Darth Vader clothes.
Anyway, that I totally not constructive criticism. I just had to share that.
Get it out of your head.
Oh, I forgot to mention. I know that there was parts where it's like he cracked his head so hard he should have died from that, stuff like that. I started thinking more about that in the story class specifically. How maybe Little Boy Death would like push him out of the way, and like would save him every time he's like gets into like these critical moments. Yeah.
I just picture him just like falling and like bashing his head, and like his eyeballs like hanging out by the left hand, and then Little Boy Death comes in and just like pushes him. There we go. I mean, should you cute as really morbid?
Yeah.
When it goes
I mean, that's the thing, right? That's the thing about little kids like that, is they don't have any preconceptions about anything or anybody, and they play together nicely. And I think that's really cool.
Oh, and
Do you have an age demographic that you'd be targeting the story at?
not really.
Okay.
I don't know. I was just thinking of something I would like to watch.
1 to 99.
Okay. Yeah.
When Little Boy Death is like saving him from the situations like you just said, is the little boy aware that it's his friend Little Boy Death because they were hanging out before, or would he be like, oh, what was that? Or would he be like, oh hey, like you just saved me again?
It's funny, I really didn't think of the human boy a lot. I was more thinking of Little Boy Death. So I would say he would know that something's up
They
with
were
his
friends
friend.
before, right?
You know, yeah. But like, I feel like your friend's there for stuff, so you wouldn't really think of it as a big deal at first. But maybe like later he'll start like connecting that every time Little Boy Death is around, he gets really hurt or something. I don't know. Sabrina?
Thank you. I thought that if you wanted to like develop the human boy a little bit more, I think it might be cool if when you're going through all the near-death experiences, if you see it happening from like a third-person perspective, and then it goes into the little boy's perspective.
Yeah.
And it's like being pushed out of the way, and he looks and he just sees a little tail end of the cloak. He's like, "Come kill me!" Damn it."
So
Stop
simple.
pushing me.
It's really cute, yeah, I like that. I don't know. Can we go to you in the back, Derek?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay then. I enjoy the prospect of a dying child.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay, cool.
Alright. Next question.
As far as the story go, it goes from like the little Reaper is very in, and then they become friends, and then he saves him a bunch of times, and then the town kind of turns against him, and the little boy is like sad and shunned.
Yeah.
And then right after that, the Grim Reaper just comes to take his life. So it seems like, as far as like the overall story plot goes, that the little boy dies kind of sad or miserable or isolated. And I was curious if you had any thoughts on that.
Oh, I didn't really think about that. Again, I focused more on little boy death when writing this, so I really didn't consider the human boy a lot. Wow, that's really mean. Yeah. I guess I would have more like that his, I don't know. Again, I feel like if it's chosen, we would develop that more. Like right now, I just wanted to get the more like beats and like tell a story real quick.
What about this? So, obviously the boy has to die. Obviously.
Owen, last question, because we need to cut.
Okay, never mind. But what if instead of just him dying, we have a scene with the little boy and little boy dead together in the afterlife, being friends?
You mean like what I said in story class?
Exactly. Julie pitched that in story class.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's what I was thinking how the ending would go. Yeah.
Cool. Great job. How many do we have?
2 more.
We may have to go to 8:40.
We'll have to reset the camera stuff. That's why I'm cutting
Yeah,
questions
okay.
a little short.
Okay. So for time's sake, I'll just start reading and then we can talk more later. Okay, so mine is called Claire's Piano. I changed the name. I hate the name too. Sorry about that. The theme also changed a little bit. I think power friendship or something about friendship and developing childhood friendships would be something good. So the logline is stuck and lonely in a hospital room with a chronic and possibly terminal illness. Ellie befriends another terminally sick child named Claire after hearing her play piano in her room. Through learning music and a sneaky escapade into an instrument store, she learns from her sprightly neighbor how joy and beauty isn't found by measuring their health, but how they learn to create meaning in their life despite that. So the synopsis is, after receiving treatments for an unspecified chronic illness, Ellie, a preteen girl, is bored in her hospital room. Annoyed by the I'm sorry, get well cards, stuffed bears, and balloons sprawled around her room, she feels lonely and isolated. Then she hears beautiful piano music coming through the walls, which prompts her to listen against it and eventually decides to investigate where it is coming from. She puts her ear to her neighbor's cracked door to get a listen and accidentally stumbles through. Shocked but humored, her neighbor Claire invites her to come in and listen. Claire is also a young preteen child with a chronic illness. Her room is completely decked out in homely decorations. Ellie feels completely comforted and right at home. Claire notices how Ellie is enamored by the music and invites her to try. She falls in love with playing, and Ellie continues to visit Claire on a daily basis to learn more. Claire lets Ellie borrow her headphones, and she listens to music during her treatments when she is alone. Ellie finally has something to do and look forward to every day. A few days later, during one of their meetups, Claire notices an instrument shop across the street. She convinces Ellie to sneak out of the hospital with her to visit the store. Decked out in hospital garbs and various portable medical equipment, they somehow successfully sneak out. Once inside the store, hilarity ensues as they go from room to room to try out new instruments with varying success. After an epic rock and roll session in one of the soundproof rooms, they turn to the window and see 2 doctors peering through, visibly upset. The doctors return the girls to the hospital, scold them, and keep them in their respective rooms on lockdown. Through the following days, Ellie can only listen to Claire play music through her walls, and she clings to every note that is played. It is only when the music stops suddenly that Ellie realizes something is wrong. She disobeys the doctors and runs across the hall to Claire's room, where she finds her friend looking pale. She immediately calls for the doctors, and Claire exchanges one final smile as they hold hands. She is then carted away for testing. After Ellie impatiently waits for her friend to return, she knows something is wrong when she sees the doctors come into her room looking sad. Ellie hides under the covers of her bed, blares music through Claire's old headphones, and begins to cry. After a little bit of time, she wakes up and sees 2 doctors standing by her bed. They smile and step aside to reveal Claire's piano set up in her room. Ellie smiles, wipes the tears away, and makes her way to the piano. While the memories seem painful, they still feel empowering. Ellie begins to play a simple song Claire taught her, and the song slowly morphs into a more complex piece with a montage of Ellie getting older. She improves and continues to practice on Claire's piano. A few years older, she can now play even better than Claire, and her room is also decorated just like her old friend. As she finishes her most complex piece yet, she turns to her door and sees a young girl listening. She smiles, reminded of her old self, and invites the girl inside to play too. The door closes behind her as they sit together and play. So, my style sheet. First off, I should just say this is very loosely based off a real life story of this girl named Claire Wineland. She had cystic fibrosis. Unfortunately, she died last year from it, from surgery. She's actually the one in that middle left picture. So obviously the names would have to change in this story. And ironically enough, Ellie, which was the name I picked completely randomly, is her sister's name, so it's kind of weird. Yeah, I envision this story, while it is kind of sad, it still is very hopeful. I wanted it to still be really happy and uplifting for the colors and the imagery. I think the style might have something Pixar-esque, but maybe a little more exaggerated. So I have pictures from like Inside Out and Up. And I liked this idea of an instrument store with like these giant guitars on the entrance. The only really sad, dull moments would probably be at the very beginning when Ellie's alone in her room. I have kind of these pictures. I also envision the lighting to be very natural, maybe warmer colors, especially in Claire's room. And then mood board. Like I said, I really wanted it to be super colorful. Claire's room is completely decked out in like carpets and little fairy lights with pictures all over the wall, maybe stuff she drew. So I just wanted it to be really playful, childlike. Looks like a normal kid's room, even though it's in a hospital. But yeah.
Cool idea, man.
Thank you.
You still make me cry.
Is there any questions?
So I know you said it's sort of loosely based off of a real story of someone with cystic fibrosis. Out of curiosity, is this someone you know personally, or?
No. So this is a girl I actually found on YouTube when I was going through a very dark time in my life, and it was also involving death. Sorry, I'm not trying to go for pity. I think this is important. But yeah, I was dealing a lot with death at one point in my life a couple years ago, and I found her on YouTube, and she was so inspiring. She actually goes to TED Talks and gives all these speeches out all over the country, and she would talk about how living in a hospital didn't have to be this sad, morbid time in your life. It can be something that's empowering. You can learn stuff. You can be a normal human. Like, you don't have to wait to be healthy to have a normal life. And so I thought, being children and being told, like, if you have cancer, if you have any sort of terminal illness, you're just told to wait until you get better in order to be able to have a life. And I just wanted to show through Claire and through a story like this that that's not true. You can still have a meaningful life and still enjoy life.
Also, can you let us know what your original title was?
This was a 3 a.m. idea. I was super tired. I called it Sick Beats because I thought it was clever. Absolutely refuse it.
Granted, it wasn't clever, but.
Thank you.
It was clever, just on
Not
off guard.
happening.
Our only response
Not
as
me.
the story team was just change the title.
I don't know if you mentioned it, but what age group are these kids?
They're preteens, so somewhere between like 11 and 14, I would say. I think Claire might be a little bit older.
I love this story. It made me cry the very first time we read it in story class. But I like the kind of cyclical ending where it, like, she has like a little bit younger kid come and play with her and stuff like that, and I think that's really cool. But I worry about it being too cyclical, like it implying a cycle of like friendship, death.
Sure.
So, and that's something that can be worked out through story class of like how to imply the like that friendship passes on, but not necessarily the entire like cycle.
Yeah.
But I would keep an eye on like ways to kind of break the cycle of the sadder part of the circle.
Yeah. So really quick, sorry. Someone brought that up to me, and I was trying to think of solutions for that. I think the idea of this is all a common theme in everyone's life, death, and I think having a positive message towards it and like being okay with maybe having a shorter life but still enjoying it is a powerful message. So I think it could be possible that that's okay, but also if we didn't want that, there's always the possibility of maybe Claire just leaving, she's done with her treatments and they have to separate forever, but she still keeps that friendship alive within her. It could be something,
I didn't want to take away the death, like Claire's death is a very impactful moment, and I don't think it should be changed. I mean the aftermath of that.
Got you. Yeah, obviously it worked out. Sorry.
So a suggestion of mine for the aftermath, because I love your story. Also, I was one of the people that was like, when we first read it. And I think a nice one too, if you want, if that concern too, because we talked about it being a cycle. Like, the last scene could be Ellie entering a room with a piano, and like, but she's a music teacher, teaching these kids instead, because that means she got better, and then now she's teaching music to sick kids in there rather than she's still in the hospital. So that just gives a slight break in that like circle, but also still keeps that like even when you're sick, you always have something to look forward to.
That's a really cool idea. I like that.
I think you should contact the family, and I think you should keep the names as they are, and see if you can get the family's input a little bit. They might actually really enjoy that.
Yeah. I thought about that too. I guess I've been nervous about doing that, but yeah. And she also set up a whole foundation for cystic fibrosis patients. It's called Claire's Place Foundation. So they deal with a lot of her story and stuff now too.
And you could put that at the end of the short too.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Parents would probably really love that.
And sorry to move us along, but we do have to be out of here at 12:30 because there's a class in there. So we have one more or?
One more.
Yeah.
Can we do the next one in 8 minutes, or do we go in 8:40?
Do the pitch, and then we'll do questions in 8:40 if we need extra time. But I have to cut the video. So at least we have the pitch.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna scroll down to my style sheet and stuff because I kind of changed my story a bit and I didn't save the edits because I'm done, but whatever. So my story is called Gumballs, and it's about a companion robot who's designed to look like a gumball machine, and he wakes up in a scooter accident on the side of the road with amnesia on a cold, rainy morning, and he has no memories of who he is and what he's supposed to do. And looking around, he sees a damp piece of paper with a bunch of locations on it, and in the puddle he notices he has like a cracked, empty bubble head. And in the reflection he also sees a glowing yellow gumball. And after twiddling around with it a bit, he realizes it has some of his memories in it, and inputting it back into his system, he has this memory of him driving in his scooter down the road with like a cake, which he sees also at the scene of the crash. And so putting two and two together, looking at the list, he sees a bakery, and he's like, maybe I work as a delivery robot for this bakery. And so he wanders into the city to the bakery, and he asks around, and the lady's like, I recognize you at the counter, and delivers him this cupcake with another gumball in it. And so he goes through this whole shebang again of uploading it, and he has another memory at a park with an old man feeding pigeons and stuff. And these pigeons scatter for some reason, and he hears like laughs, and like he can't see whose face it is because all the pigeons are blocking it. So he's like, weird. He goes to the park, he sees this old man, the same old man feeding pigeons at the fountain. He's like, hey, you were in my memories. Do I belong to you or something? And the old man's like, no, but you were here yesterday. And he's like, oh, do you know, have you seen any of these like gumballs around? And he points to like a pigeon's nest way up into a tree. And, and so our little robot dude climbs up into the tree, shimmies to the nest, and he reaches out for this gumball, and a beehive falls on his head. And he has to jump into a pond, and you know, that gets rid of the bees the old cartoony way that you normally see. But inputting this new memory, he has a similar memory of him shimmying up to the tree to get a kite, and a beehive falls on his head again. And taking the beehive off this time, he hears a very similar laugh to before in the pigeons, but he can't see the face because like the sun is like blaring through and there's a glare and his memory ends. And so he's kind of at like the standstill where he's not quite sure where to go from here. And it kind of cuts to this montage of him wandering around the city, just generally talking to people and stuff, and like people recognizing him and being like, oh, you helped me with this and everything. And they take him to different, like, give him different gumballs that bring back different memories of like who he is and like what kind of a robot he is and what he does and stuff. And so he's walking by this urban street, like, and he sees a bunch of kids pulling like a red cart, and for some reason it like triggers him and causes him to like short circuit, and he like freaks out. So he gets out of there as soon as possible. And he runs past a toy store where he sees a very similar kite from one of his previous memories, and going in there, the shop owner recognizes him and is like, oh, you were in here yesterday, you ordered something from here. And he comes out with this giant teddy bear and also a black gumball. And hesitant to take this gumball, our little robot protagonist grabs it and like inputs it, and it's like this really terrible memory he has of going down a steep hill in this red wagon, and he ends up falling out, and like the person in the wagon with him falls out and hurts themselves and is crying, and it's like a terrible scene. And that's where he realizes who he belongs to, and but also that he hurt that person. So knowing full well all this, he like hesitantly goes back to like the address he last remembers, and he hears like a birthday party going on and everything, and he kind of like peers through the backyard door and sees like this little girl celebrating with her family and everything. And he's hesitant to go in, and like everyone sees him and like everything stops, and the little girl like comes up to him to like hug him, and he like walks, so he like kind of like flinches back, but and she's like sad and everything, so but she has this idea, and she runs into the house, and she brings back she brings back this iridescent, very colorful, rainbow-esque gumball, and in that gumball is a memory of his first reboot when she first got him, and it's them having a little like tea party with this tiny little bear, and like they're enjoying themselves and everything, and he realizes like no matter what, their friendship is really strong, and they're and there's nothing he could do that would actually like hurt her, and so they end up hugging and like forgiving each other, and it ends with them blowing out her birthday candles together. And,
Hey, I hate to do this, but we do need to move to 8:40 to.
We're all gonna
to
be
get-
on 8:40.
Any questions for Allison?
Yeah, well, I'm just kind of in this world, just in the background, interacting with the gumball robot. Do you see like a lot of other robots being implemented based on other ideas?
I originally had like a lot of robots at like the bakery, helping with the bakery stuff, and then you have like robots at the park being accompanying families and stuff and all that. Like, robots are very heavily prevalent in this society that I imagine.
Are there like robots that take the place of like say trash cans or gumball
Yeah,
machines?
stuff like that. I was kind of imagining, my style sheet's not up here, but kind of like Baby Hero-esque kind of world where you have robots and stuff that just help with like day-to-day tasks, and it's like modern but yet still kind of set in a world that's very much like our own.
Yeah, we'll bring your style sheet up. We'll get on it.
Yes, Ryan.
Cool. Two quick questions.
Yeah.
One, it does seem like there's a lot of like detail and involvement in the story's progress. I was wondering how long you thought it would take to tell this story, and then also you totally don't have to say anything, but I'm very curious what your inspiration was for this.
So I kind of just added more detail because the first time I pitched it in like the written form, it was a really basic story where it was like, there's a gumball dude, he doesn't have a memory, but he has a list of places, and it's him just going to like different locations, and like each location led to a different location on the list, and it was that, and it was very like stagnant and boring, so I added some a little bit of extra detail just to make it have a better flow, I guess, and arc. And I think, so I walk through the science building every day to get to the UHL house, which I study in. And there's this gumball machine in the corner, and I always look at it, and I'm like, wouldn't it be fun if you had a robot? And the gumballs in his head were his memories, and I kind of just went with it from there. And yeah.
So just to add to that, on the first pitch that you did in the story class, a very long and interesting discussion ensued after we read that.
Yeah.
Everybody was like, oh, personally I said, it'd be awesome if it was done as a film noir kind of thing, right? You could have that kind of look and feel of a film noir, but it's a gumball machine.
And to like comment on that, I kind of had this idea in the beginning where like the world he kind of wakes up to is like devoid of color. It's very monochromatic, and like with each gumball he gets, the color of the gumball is introduced into the world. And with the black gumball, once he has this terrible memory, it's kind of like it devoids all of the colors of the other gumball and everything. And like it's very like color based, kind of like Megan's, where you have different tones. And I didn't realize that when I made my style sheet and like my mood board, so it's not really represented up there. If you want to scroll down. Yeah, but for like the overall mood, I wanted it to be like mainly like bright and colorful as like you introduce the gumballs in there, and have like this kind of vintage glow you see in like Polaroids and stuff, just like that's associated with memories. And I realized I didn't even pitch what my theme was. Wow. So my theme was like memories and how they like shape you as a person and your character and stuff like that. And I also think memories fit in really well to an anthology because it applies to like a lot of different things. Memories can be like gritty and like you can have like war stories and stuff, or like really sweet, like happy memories that are very family friendly and stuff. So yes.
Did you think about because obviously with the way the story progresses, there's going to be a lot of environments and a lot of population that we will have to kind of figure out as a team.
Yeah.
So do you have an idea of maybe like how we might conquer those challenges in a way?
So I was kind of imagining it being kind of like a tight-knit urban area. I know we're doing like city blocks and stuff in our environment class now, but I was imagining kind of like a Central Park-esque thing where you have like this central kind of park area and you have surrounding buildings that affect it, and maybe like a sloped hill that like is like part of it. But I don't think it'd be as large scale as we think.
Yeah, I think we could do it with movie magic. Cheating.
On that point, I imagine that you're pretty flexible with like the middle part of the story, right? Because I think that the concept of like gumball machine robot wakes up without any memories and like has to collect gumballs to get his memories back, and it leads him to back the little girl is super good. I really like that. I think the in between is a little choppy and needs some work, but yeah, I think like there's that alone has so many possibilities. Like maybe you think he's tracking like a murder mystery, and then it ends up that he's not. He's just like tracking his steps back to a little girl or something. Yeah, I just wanted to throw that like there's a lot of locations now, which is like any of the other ones that we can figure out the middle part.
I wanted there to be like some like red herrings or like dead ends where it kind of seemed like he's lost and he's not sure where to go. Because oftentimes I feel like sometimes you have like memories that impact you and stuff, and like some of them are good and some of them are bad, and like some of them just like they're just there and they don't really do much for you, but they're still a part of you. And like portraying that idea.
Yep, I like that. That
Like,
even if a memory is bad, doesn't mean it should be forgotten because you learn from it and you grow from it.
Yeah.
I think as far as an anthology goes, the like memory constructs kind of thing, I think that's super cool idea.
Oh yeah. That was a lot of possibilities.
And I feel like Ryan's story and like Megan's story too will tie in really nice with that as a like a memory thing where like you have like these memories of like a person or a time, and they like invoke like these different feelings of like friendship and stuff too is big in those stories. So I feel like memory is a good one to encapsulate a lot of things.
I see the little the gumball robot as being, maybe he has like a name badge that says retro. And there's all these, you know, modern robots, what we would perceive to be modern robots, and then the old school gumball machine is a robot, but you get retro. Wally, yeah, like that kind of thing.
Any other questions?
We can open it up, because we have a little bit of time, open it up for just general comments overall, if anybody has any. How they see this process is working out. It'd be nice to get input from outside the story class. Now's your opportunity. It doesn't mean it's your only opportunity, but this is a good opportunity, so.
What are the planned next steps for this?
The next steps of this is to organize, we talked about this on Monday. We're gonna organize whatever story we move forward with, starting on Monday. We're gonna organize into 3 teams within the story team, and each one of them is gonna independently tackle the story that we chose. And then we're gonna come back, they'll probably start off by doing some basic beat boards, some basic character development kind of stuff. And then we'll come back and see how that jives with each one, right? Compare and contrast, and then from there, start again, right? It's an iterative process. So there's all of these stories that we have. There's still a lot of work to do to flush things out, to make them compact and easily told stories. I mean, the thing about a short story is I use the analogy of kind of sitting at Union Station over there waiting for a train, and you watch a family doing something across the platform, and that you're able to tell a story from that, right? A short story can't be deep. It can't be huge onion skin of layers of the background of the hero. It has to be really kind of a slap in the face, right? You don't have much time to do anything more than that, but you have to do that slap in the face very efficiently. And so, so that's really what we need to do, is go through the process of distilling those beats down and finding that quickly told story that is a meaningful, and what I say, a story is an enlightening and engaging commentary on the human condition. That's what a story is. Beyond that, it's plot, right? The plot just guides us through that idea of a story, through the arc of the story. And so that's really what we need to do, is figure out what is that enlightening and engaging human commentary on the human condition, and then we'll figure out how to get it there, right? What's the catalyzing image at the beginning? What's the catalyzing image in the end?
So after better fleshing out the story that gets chosen, how does the rest of the anthology develop from that?
So my thoughts on that, and I think we've talked about it amongst the faculty, is that once we have, at the end of this semester, the idea is that we'll have a fairly strong storyboard animatic, and some rough sketches on character. The story development of all of these, the main story and the anthology stories, is going to continue throughout. You'll be working, when you're the most successful with story, you're going all the way up to the end with this storyboarding thing, right? You have to do it. Things change, ideas change, schedules change, processes change. All of it has an effect on the story, and all of it needs to be taken into consideration with the storyboarding process. So I think that what we would do is be able to have a presentation at the beginning of next semester with the book development team, which I'll be teaching that as well. And we'll talk about the story, and then those of you that want to break into smaller teams and start pitching ideas for the anthology, the shorter versions of these, that's when that happens. Because you'll have an idea of what's going on. We'll have some sort of tag, some sort of hook for you. Like we said, memories would be one hook. And then you can start developing your story ideas from that.
Another
Wait, Eric first.
I think Owen was actually first.
Okay.
Another idea that I know Frenchie discussed is from the stories that we have pitched, like I think in total we had like 32, not 32.
21.
We had 21.
21, I think.
21 stories pitched. An idea was that we could reach out to some of those people who had similar themes or themes that we saw were similar to the
Yeah.
ones that.
There will be a follow-up email once we figure out what the main one's theme is. And then anyone who I feel like it fits in a theme, or I can find as quickly as many that do fit in a theme as broadly as possible, there will be an email sent out to you if you want to spend time condensing it and shortening it up so it could fit in the anthology. I'll make sure you guys have some time to do that, because I know jumping into Look Dev, that would be really late to suddenly start kind of condensing it down.
Actually, I don't
depending.
think it will be too late.
Yeah.
One
But
of
at
the
least
problems.
want to have a pre-warning so
Sure,
that
yeah.
there can be thought about
One
it.
of the problems that we always had with look development and running story and look development at the same time is you wound up with a whole bunch of students who are only doing look development, waiting on the story, right? So my idea is that we'll have the team for the larger story. You guys can form that team next semester, and you'll have the stuff that you can start working on. Others can be involved in that. This is the other thing too. There's no segregation between teams. You can be fluid, move in and out, and that's the expectation, that you'll be able to work on any one of these at any time. And that's really how it should work. That's the way it works in a studio, right? There may be 3, 4, 5 projects going on at one time, and you'll be called on to help with modeling on one project and then bounced over to doing lighting on another project if you're a generalist kind of thing. So what I'll do is start working with the smaller teams on their stories right away at the beginning of the semester, and we'll kind of go through the same process that we went through with the story team. It doesn't mean that you're gonna be behind, it just means that we have to develop those stories, right? That has to happen. So that's kind of the nature of what we've chosen to do, is just gonna play out like that.
So just to be clear, we're not gonna lock down our anthology theme until middle of next semester?
No, it'll be done at the end of this semester.
End of this semester?
Yeah,
we're
and
making our anthology theme?
don't take that idea of, I don't like that word lockdown for the anthology thing.
Well,
Our idea is that it's a very loose connection, right? So we would say maybe it's memories, but that could be all over the place, right? Julie, do you have something to add to that, or?
Yeah, so, with the story being developed, we'll give hints to the theme so you guys can kind of get your feet wet as far as developing the stories. I'd like to think that we'd have a
Yeah.
generalized
We will.
theme at first, and then what you mean as in the finalized theme would be by the end of this semester.
Yeah, I guess I just waited, it seems like we're working backwards from a short to an anthology, not from an anthology to all our shorts. So it seems, I don't know, it seems like backwards.
The theme that we're considering is not necessarily the theme for the story that we choose. It's gonna be the theme from the series of stories that we received, because that's the general themes that we're receiving in the water. Meaning we received 21 stories, right? We were able to, from reading all those 21 stories, to see a general theme popping up with a few of them, and them being loosely connected to an overarching theme, and that's going to influence our decision. We're not just going to base it just on the one story that we're making for the main storyline. We're going to be influenced by all of the little stories we received.
One quick
What are
thing
your
before I duck
concerns?
out. So, at least how I read the word anthology, and from the anthology series I have seen, and y'all can disagree with me on this, but the way I see anthologies is they can vary in how thematically they are connected. Like if you look at Love, Death, and Robots, or Black Mirror, or there's another one called So Many Cartoons that's done by Channel Federator. Yeah. So a lot of them don't necessarily, if you look at the stories, there are absolutely no connection, like story-wise, and sometimes even the thematic connections are very loose. So I think that we need to, part of the idea behind getting this main theme knocked out of the way early on, as Chili pointed out, is to kind of, one, get a broader theme, but we shouldn't feel like, as Howard said, connected to.
I would prefer to not call it a theme, I would prefer to call it a prompt. Yeah, more than a theme.
I guess, just what my concerns were,
Yeah.
like Love, Death, Robots, you start with Love, Death, and Robots, right? So you can interchange those with like robots and monsters and stuff like that. But like Black Mirror, like Owen mentioned, is like a technology themed anthology, right? So all of them deal with different technologies in different ways, but it's always about technology. And I haven't seen all of Black Mirror since, but it's almost always about technology being negative from what I know. So it's broad, right? It's got a lot of possibilities, but it's also very specific.
Well, we're not gonna go very, very specific. It's gonna be a little bit more open than that.
Okay, so
I think that my personal opinion is the idea of keeping it very broad to start with, and then once we get a grasp on how many short stories we're doing and what those short stories entails, we can start to kind of bind down on the theme that we kind of create together, or the prompt we accidentally create together. So it starts with it being very general to kind of get the ideas flowing in the different ways, and then like as we get closer to starting senior year, that's when we'll start to like.
Yeah, and here's the other thing. Here's the other thing. Well, we have to have it locked down. We have to have something locked down for everything next semester.
No, I'm not talking about the big story.
No, I'm talking about the littler stories too. Because look development will be going on for those next semester as well.
But they wouldn't be dividing into teams, you said?
Yeah.
No, they will divide into teams next semester.
Yeah, but you said that if you don't have your teams yet, you can't lock anything down for story or
Yeah.
little.
Say that again?
You're saying just now that you have to have it locked down, have the ideas for the anthology locked down this semester.
Not this semester, next semester. In the spring.
So, like at the end of the spring.
I would
Or
hope
in
that it
spring.
would come earlier than that.
Okay, but in the spring.
Yeah.
Okay, so this semester, the end of fall semester, we have the main short.
Yes. Yeah.
And the main overarching theme?
Yes, maybe.
Maybe, okay.
I think it's going to be natural. So here's the thing. This is all new. We've never done this before. So that means that there's going to be a lot of discussion and a lot of involvement by you guys. I think you're trying to find a very finite definition of what this will be, and I'm seeing it as being very open and very fluid.
Well,
so
dates are subject to change, but I think people just want a generalization of when they need to expect what.
So, all right, here's what you need to expect. We're going to do in the story class, once this is chosen, we're going to work on a storyboard animatic. We're going to flush out the story. We're going to start visualizing it with the storyboard animatic, and that will be subject to change, and it will change quite often, all the way up until the end, probably. And then the team, the 16 or 18 people that are forming that team will focus on the look development of that starting next semester. The rest of you that want to form smaller teams, you should start thinking about forming those smaller teams now so that we can hit the ground running in January to be able to start working on those smaller stories in January. We need to have that going in January. There's no waiting till the end of September. We don't have time for that. So you need to start thinking about, as we develop this, whatever story we pick, we'll be keeping everybody in the loop and telling you where it is. You're gonna have a chance to see what's going on and what we're doing. We're not gonna hide that, right? So you could start thinking about story ideas so that we can, in January, hit the ground running. You need to have your teams formed in January. That's the way it's gonna work. Is that all right?
Comments, questions, concerns?
We got a bunch so.
Okay.
Are you guys okay with that? I mean, you're kind of like,
I think that's
I-
totally reasonable.
huh?
I think that's totally reasonable.
Yeah, I don't see that there's any other way to do it.
I had a comment over there.
Yeah.
I think let's like start thinking about storylines.
You could talk louder.
And once we choose the storyline and we're developing it, then we'll have like we'll at least know what story we're basing the anthology off of on a theme level.
I think I want to make sure there's like a distinction here. Correct me if I'm wrong. The smaller shorts are not going to be like top-down like directive. These are the smaller shorts we're doing. So pick something. Like the smaller shorts are going to be developed by groups that form within themselves. And if like you and like a few of your friends say, hey, this one story that didn't get chosen, we really like that. We want to like see if we can kind of turn that into a shorter thing. You know, that's awesome. But then if you and 4 other people want to do like some sort of like narrative-driven game level or something like that, that like you can make a case for like tailoring into the theme that again is very loose for the anthology. Like that's all great too. So I guess it's more. It comes from like people can form groups and then create stories within that as compared to,
Yeah, mind you,
here's like the stories that were pitched. We have 21 of them. Pick something. Like this, we're not like beholden to that process.
The idea is that we want to give the freedom to the smaller teams to develop their own stories, right? That are linked in some way to the main story. That's the whole idea behind an anthology. We've chosen to do that. That's the road that we're going to go down. The idea here is that when we submit these films to film festivals, it'll be submitted as one package, as one film, right? It's just like Paris Je t'aime or Animatrix. When you went into the theater, you watched all of them, right? It's not like Love, Death, and Robots in that you can select what you watch. I mean, we could do that as well, but when we submit to festivals, we want to submit all of them. We want it to be, like a 10-minute or 12-minute film that's made up of 5, 6, 7 different films, one of them being longer than the others. Yeah?
I think so.
Okay.
Okay, are we good?
Yeah, we good?
Okay. Ideally by the end of this week,
Yep.
as soon as possible.
We
'cause
want to
it's
hit the
fresh in your
ground
head.
running Monday. Yeah.
Because I'll send it out, like, I'm going to work on this in story class. Hopefully the video editing won't take forever. But I'll just have it so that way we are straight to go. You get everything you need, vote on your favorites, and by next week we should be having our main story picked out. No more hopping around.
And we'll be letting you know what that story is.
Yes,
Yeah,
we will
yeah,
let you
yeah,
know
right,
what the
yeah.
story is.
Yeah.
Because that's a reveal
Yeah, no,
of
we're
this is
gonna
what
put,
we're doing.
and you won't know.
Yeah.
We're gonna put black tape on the windows.
I will be standing up for the story door.
Just jump on up and down.
I think the thing I want to leave you with is just rest assured is that this, our idea is that, hey guys, our idea is that this way of doing this idea of the anthology, I think is really great because it's going to give opportunity for those of you who want to develop stories, the chance to develop stories, and it takes into consideration the model that we already have, which a lot of you came and told us you want to continue to do. So it's trying to meet the requests from both sides, and fortunately we didn't have anybody that wanted to do individual projects. There was either small groups or the one large group, and this is a good way to address that mix.
Yeah,